Hi, I'm Michael Tapes. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up the LensAlign and camera so that they're accurately positioned for the proper results when setting up your autofocus. We use our patented True Parallel Alignment system. What True Parallel Alignment allows you to do with no other sophisticated equipment is to precisely align the imaging sensor of the camera with the focus target of LensAlign so that they're perfectly parallel. This is necessary for repeated and accurate results when setting your autofocus. It's actually very simple to do, and that's what I'm going to show you in this video. Let's go. First, I want to show you what we're trying to achieve. I'm in live view on this Nikon D7200 with 50mm 1.4 lens, just arbitrary. We're four feet away, and the camera choice is arbitrary. It works the same on Nikon, Canon. The button pushes are a little different. But you can see here on the A sighting port, we've got the black circle, which is representing the rear sighting plate, is concentric with the hole in the front sighting plate. This happens to be very much perfect, but as long as it's within the hole and generally centered, we're fine. Let me show you one other thing. If the background, I'm using a black background to shoot this video so that you're not distracted by other things in the background. When you're shooting your test, it's not mandatory to have a black background, but you don't want something that's very bright because that's going to introduce flare into the picture. And into the lens of the focusing system. But let me show you, if you put a little white behind the LensAlign, that in fact that hole, the rear sighting port, is going to turn white. So in some cases that's easier to see, and now we see that. So the color of the hole is going to be based on the color of the background and whether it's lit or not. Okay? So either way, we'll continue to use the black. Okay, just to keep things simple. But I wanted to show you that. The first thing we're going to do is put the LensAlign and camera in arbitrary positions so that I can show you how to start the entire process. So if we turn the camera, point it down, okay, so we're totally arbitrary. So what you would do is mount the camera on a proper photographic tripod, which means it needs to be really sturdy, a good solid tripod, just like you would shoot critical photographs in your photography. So something that, if you're using LensAlign, you probably have. The tripod that we mount the LensAlign on doesn't have to be very sturdy because the LensAlign is so light and nothing's going to move it. But the key thing is that it has a pan tilt head, because that'll allow us to make the fine adjustments that we want to make, and you'll see how much easier it makes. You can do it without it, but it's much easier with that. So let's start the process. Where the normal distance in shooting tests, which is 8.2 feet per 100 millimeters, so we're at 50 millimeters, so we're at 4.1 feet approximately. So I measured 4 feet between the center poles of the tripod, and that's close enough. Okay, the first thing we do is aim the LensAlign to the camera. Okay, now I can't see what's in the camera, so I'm just aiming it generally in the direction of the camera. That's all we need to do. And now the camera needs to be aimed at LensAlign. That's step number 2. I'm going to zoom out so I can see what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to position the camera. This could be a ball head or it doesn't matter. So I'm going to position the camera that we're roughly with LensAlign. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, and see that we're, of course, not set up properly. We just, adjusted this stuff loosely. But even this, we're pretty close, and I can actually see that I need, which directions I need to move the dot. But let's not even care about that. I'll show you that later. The best and fastest way to set up the LensAlign and camera is to use True Parallel Alignment, our patented system, and do what we call back sighting. Okay, we're going to use the A sighting port. Some of the documentation calls out the B sighting port, but in general it's better to use the A. It doesn't really matter if you use A or B as long as you use them consistently. The ports, let me zoom out a little bit and show you how they're labeled here. Okay, and I'm zooming around with the live view, and that's going to have consequences later, but I did that on purpose. Okay, so on the focus target, we also have A, B, and C. So if we sight with the A port, let's make sure we focus align with the A, and likewise the B. The older LensAlign Mark IIs don't have this third hole, so you'd be using the center, and then you'd be using the B sight on the focus target. But I digress. Okay, So what I'm going to do is show you backsighting. And remember that I just decentered the live view, but for this purpose it doesn't matter. So I'm going to zoom in just so you can see what's going on. And what I'm going to do is shut the lights of LensAlign just so that it's not shining in my eyes. And since the camera is in the dark here, I'm going to use a flashlight to illuminate the camera, and it also gives me specular highlights off the lens. So now as I backsight through the A sighting port, I can pretty accurately center this. Okay, so now I'm going to put the lighting back on the LensAlign and let's check how well I did. And probably it's going to be, about 90% close. Sometimes I'll get it perfect, sometimes not. Well, that's about 98% perfect, and I wouldn't move that if that were, if I were setting this up. So that's it. I mean, just set up the cameras, point the camera at LensAlign, the LensAlign at the camera, do a backsighting, and we're done, except for the final step. Okay, but what I want to show you is what if the backsighting wasn't perfect. So let's assume the backsighting was a little off in the vertical axis. Okay, so in this case we see that the rear, and I'm just focusing now, and by the way, in terms of exposure right now, all I'm doing is getting an exposure so the live view is very bright. And if anything, I want to stop down the lens to get some more depth of field, make it easier to see. And I want to slow down the shutter speed and raise the ISO so that I have a nice bright image like I do here so I can see what I'm doing. We'll set the proper exposure for the real tests in the next segment. Okay, so I see that the rear dot, if you will, the rear sighting port has to be raised up. So I could either raise up the camera, but that's a pain, or I can tilt down LensAlign. So remember, with the pan tilt, I'm just working one axis, so I just nudge it down a little bit. Let's see if I went enough. Take a look, and that's perfect on a vertical basis. And the same thing, of course, for the horizontal. If the horizontal is out, then I just have to make a slight adjustment without having to move the camera. So I see that the dot has to move to the left. The dot, meaning the rear sighting port hole, has to move to the left. So I'm going to move the front of the LensAlign to the right, towards this way. Okay, perfect. I'm going to lock that down and then check just after I lock it down, make sure I didn't move it when I locked it down. Bump the tripod, okay, and now we're perfect. So what I want to do now is put the focus target on and then get the final positioning of the port A into the center of the LCD. I don't use the viewfinder to center this because the viewfinder has parallax and it's not accurate. We use the LCD. So using the LCD and the Nikon or Canon logo on the bottom and the buttons on the left, I want to get the line here centered in the K, okay, and centered on the middle dot. Okay, when that's good, our final check is a shot, it's a photograph. But I want to show you one thing. We're going to use a cable release for the shot because if I don't, notice that I'm going to be able to move the camera. When I'm holding the camera to take the shot, it moves the camera, even on a sturdy tripod. So always use a cable release for all your shots. If you don't have a cable release, use a 2-second self-timer. Okay, so I take off live view, and I take the shot with autofocus on. I zoom in, and I see that it's not centered. Well, I tricked you because remember back a second ago when we did the live view, I had moved the live view frame. So the live view focus frame is not centered. We do that by pressing the OK button on the Nikon. You see how it moved to the left? If the focus frame is not centered, then when we zoom in, it's going to zoom into that and the whole camera is going to be shifted. So again, we press the OK button on Nikon or the joystick on Canon, and we center that up, and now we have to recenter the image. Okay, zoom in. Okay, so that looks about right. And it looks about right this way. Again, the final check is done with a photograph. Zoom in. Okay, and it looks just about right. I'm going to throw that into focus tune and make sure that the crosshairs are centered, and then we're set to go. So we've finished this phase of the setup. And if I weren't bloviating here, this would have happened very quickly. Mount the camera and the LensAlign on the tripods, point the LensAlign back at the camera at LensAlign, back sight, and usually it's perfect. Test shots, focus target, we're done. I'm Michael Tapes. Thanks for watching.